Ju Wenjun, four-time women's world champion. She is now there in the history books alongside some of the women's greatest chess players in history. What a great performance from Tan Zhongyi.
Super exciting.
Almost flawless performance there.
She will play Ju Wenjun for the Women's World Championship.
Ju Wenjun continues her ascent to the top.
Tan Zhongyi is unstoppable.
We're seeing some of the best chess in the world.
Hello and welcome to the 2025 FIDE Women's World Championship between reigning world champion Ju Wenjun and Tan Zhongyi. And we start in the dazzling metropolis that is Shanghai, the perfect backdrop for such an interesting and exciting match. It is a rematch from 2018 and it's promising absolutely everything. I can't wait for this event to begin. And there we see the chairs, and we have ringside tickets to all the action that is going to unfold over the next few weeks. I'm your host, International Master Jovanka Hauska, and alongside me, it is my great privilege to be seated next to the legendary Grandmaster that is Judit Polgar. Judit, are you as pumped for this as I am?
Hi, Joey. It's great to be here again. And I'm excited to see an interesting match. And hopefully already it's going to be an interesting game today. Game 1.
Yeah, it is game 1 of 12. And for those of you tuning in just to see those nitty-gritty technical details, well, we have it all explained for you. So let's check out the format.
China's top women players are battling for the Women's World Chess Championship again. Reigning champ Ju Wenjun took down Lei Ting-Jie in 2023. Now she is back to defend her title against challenger Tan Zhongyi. Like last time, the match is a hometown showdown. The first 6 games will be played in Shanghai, Ju Wenjun's turf. The next 6, Chongqing, where Tan Zhongyi calls home. It is a race to 6.5 points. If they are tied at 6, we will go to a 4-game rapid tiebreak. Still tied? 2 faster rapid games. Still tied? It is time for blitz. And if they still cannot break the deadlock, we will go to sudden death. One win will decide it all. Tiebreaks, if needed, will be played in Chongqing. It is a battle of skill, stamina, and strategy. When the dust settles, who will take home the title?
And as mentioned, it's going to be an epic battle. And there we can see the time control. And the format, the first player to win 6.5 points, 1 point for the win. And this is where it gets exciting, because if there is a tie after 12 games, we are going to be going to tie breaks. And you know what happens then? Everything starts to get frantic. High pressure instant scenarios indeed. And here it is, the time control. It is a relatively familiar one for chess players, with players having 90 minutes for 40 moves and then 30 seconds of bonus time per move from move 1. And on move 41, the players do get time to breathe, relax, compose, as they get an extra 30 minutes on the clock. And of course, they still enjoy that 30-second bonus. So everything is familiar when it comes to the time control there, Judith. Nothing untoward there.
No, it's kind of usual time control these days, right? There were periods of time when it was shifting from different kind of time controls, but I think the players are very familiar with that, and it's not difficult for them to get in this mode to adjust themselves.
Yes, so at least they won't be making any big changes there. And let's take a look at the prize fund, because as always, it's a World Championship match. So the fund is going to be epic. And take a look at this. because
whoever wins this World Championship match pockets a massive 300,000 euros. With a total prize fund of 500,000 euros, it is one of the biggest payouts in chess for 2025. If the match is settled in classical games, the champ takes 60%. If it goes to tiebreaks, they get 55%. Either way, both players are guaranteed at least 200,000 euros, and the winner walks away with at least 275,000. Ju Wenjun and Tan Zhongyi are already cashing in, but who will take the biggest prize?
that is indeed the question. And there you can see it is a big chunk of money for the winner, also the runner-up as well. But they do have seconds to pay, and they do have a lot of training, a lot of high-pressure moments ahead of them. And we are going to head over to the playing hall and see our two very noble warriors getting ready for that first fight. You can see Ju Wenjun there with the white pieces, Tan Zhongyi, black. Oh, Judit! Can you feel the nerves?
Absolutely. But the first thing I noticed that it was Ju Wenjun playing white, having a black jacket, and her opponent is wearing a white jacket, playing with the black pieces. Of course, it's small things. They must be extremely excited. And it's not the first time they met. It's a scenario which is repeating itself. We will talk about it later. And but still, it's for them, surely, as we can see, that they are getting into the zone, into their mindset, exclude everything what is surrounding them, and really focus on the match. It's the warm-up period, game number 1 and 2, I believe, in a game 12-game match. So they know that nothing, most likely nothing serious, nothing decisive going to be happening. At the same time, still, it's game 1. They have to fight it out, but they know that if it's a draw, it will go on for a long time. And they have to spare their energy also. They can't give everything out in game 1.
Well, this is going to be a very interesting scenario because we know Ju Wenjun, she is a strategical player. She loves playing those long games. We saw that in her World Championship match in 2023 against Lei Qingjie, always playing it out until the bitter end, until game 12, she seized her moment. And Tan Zhongyi, well, this is going to be a big test for her because, yes, she probably has those ghosts from 2018 and the match that she lost against Ju Wenjun. And she knows as well that she has a different style. She mustn't allow Ju Wenjun to get those long-winded games and draw things out until the very end, because that is going to be draining, as you mentioned. And whilst we're waiting for these two players to shake hands and get on with the game, let's take a look at the head-to-head. History does, after all, repeat itself. This is exact deja vu from the match of 2018. And, well, we are going to just have a look. And let's, as we see Ju Wenjun getting ready on the camera, let's go to that head-to-head. Let's take a look at these scores. And Judit, including that Women's World Championship match, is still a pretty tight score.
Yes, indeed, it's a very tight score, and which is also interesting that actually both players were born in the same year. They are both from 91, so probably grew up and playing in all these under 10, 12, 8, 14, all kind of huge championship, Asian championship. And indeed, it's very tight, but still we see sometimes 1 or 2 points can be significant in a match or in different times and different situations, right? So there is a little advantage for Ju Wenjun, but I think it's more important that she won that match back in 2018. So it's very important, I believe, for Tan Zhongyi not to have the psychological problem. So to start and play from scratch and to say going to be a kind of a balanced match.
Yes, I do think that we are expecting a balanced match. Well, but in terms of balance, in terms of Zen, in terms of absolutely everything that is lining out for us, what kind of opening do you think we can expect from Ju Wenjun? You know, traditionally she opens up with d4. She has been known to play e4 on occasion. We do know that Hare Krishna is one of her seconds, probably not the only one. And Tan Zhongyi, she has a much more aggressive, dynamic style, I would say. Do you think that Ju Wenjun will be going for the familiar? Well, actually, we might not have to guess, as the handshake as appears on our screens. We have e4.
Wow. I was just wondering whether what is going to be the first game move, but it seems like very convincingly Ju is playing e4 and knight f3, so we're seeing a Sicilian. Let's see what's going to be the outcome of this. Some excitement for our
It is, and it's a Sicilian, I think, that was played in your honor, because I've seen a lot of your games which have opened up with e6 and Taimanovs.
Yeah, this position was on the board in my career from either side, and I played here the move knight c6. So let's see if Tan is also... No, she's playing knight f6, which I believe it's not so common these days, knight c3. So now we're going to see if it's going to be the Sveshnikov, well, not the Sveshnikov, but we might end up there. Or is she going to be playing the Scheveningen system after knight c3 to play d6?
And she goes for the second most popular move, one that you didn't suggest, but bishop to d3, also protecting the e4 pawn. And I'm guessing the knight comes out now.
Yeah, actually, I was not playing bishop d3 too much in my career. It was the knight c3 which I was playing, and that was the common move. Though I must say that in my career already, when I was a teenager, it was popular to play this way with black. But later on, it was much more popular to play the Naider system for black and playing other systems. So this is kind of a system that I think the players try to surprise the opponent, going to the direction. What, of course, it's not a new system for black, but they try to play something that it's forgotten a bit. So knight c6. Now I believe white is going to be grabbing on c6. That would be the natural continuation, but definitely white has to make a decision. c3 can be also possible, but I believe after d5 it would be not very promising. So knight c6 is the logical continuation of the game.
Right. I don't see any other move apart from bishop to e3, but yeah, knight c6 played. And I like the fact that Ju Wenjun has decided to test Tan Zhongyi in her Sicilian. And like you say, we're going to see some ducking and diving as the players try to avoid the others' preparation.
Yeah, in this position, of course, we can talk about it, that it's a first serious decision black has to make, whether which pawn to capture on c6, right? At the same time, it's the much more common way of capturing with the b pawn, so it comes towards to supporting the center, and black is going to be playing d5. Because after d takes c6, it would be a very symmetrical position, and white would be playing castle. It's kind of more comfy for white. So after b takes c6, how the game went? Let's see if c4 will be the move, or going short castle, or knight c3. But definitely black's plan is going to be d5. An idea for white to go castle, but we have bishop. What was the move?
Did you see bishop e3? Bishop e3.
Let's see what's the move. Bishop f4, I believe.
Oh, bishop f4. Okay. Okay, that one's been played before. So I'm checking out the database. The main move, as you mentioned, were just castle, c4, get that grip in the center, but bishop to f4, presumably to reinforce control over the d6 square, maybe with a well-timed e5.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that in my times, when someone would play bishop f4, we would say that it's a computer move, you know, because somehow logically it was before we were thinking that castle and the f4 square is for the pawn to go with f2 f4. But of course, bishop on f4, it can make sense also to stop the rook from going to rook b8 and having a good spot for the rook on the b file. d5, very natural, knight d2. So probably this was the main idea, to bring out the bishop to f4 to be able quickly to place the knight to d2. But before, there were also possibilities to play b3 and to put the bishop on the big long diagonal on b2. So that would also make a lot of sense. But now let's see what are the changes with having the bishop on f4 and not on b2, or keeping it on c1 back on the basic square. Because later on, there is a good chance that white can be playing e5. But still, I'm pretty sure that this bishop on f4 will not stay there for long. It will either move back to e3, it's going to be moving back to g3, but in a later phase of the game, I would think that there should be a move with the bishop, so white is making space for the pawn. But maybe there is a completely different strategy here. We'll see. Okay, so bishop g5. It didn't stay there for long.
No, but that move makes sense. I must admit, like, Tan's move took me by surprise, g6. I thought that I was expecting a natural bishop developing move to e7, but then I started thinking about the consequence. e5 is in the air. This bishop on d3 is problematic. It makes sense to blunt it. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that I was thinking, you know, with e5 and this beautiful bishop on d3 pointing at that h7 square. It becomes uncomfortable for black. So g6 made a lot of sense, you know, because then you want to go bishop to g7 as Tan played, and then castles, and you got a rock solid pawn formation on the light squares.
Yes, and after g6, I think it was not only the idea that she wants to bring out the bishop to fianchetto kind, but it's also very important that after e5, black would be able to play knight h5 to attack the bishop, gaining a tempo, and after that to continue the game. So here the white bishop would get in trouble because no space on g5, bishop g3 is not something you want, bishop e3, then d4 would be possible. So there it became a very concrete situation suddenly. So after g6, e5 was not something to consider. At the same time, surely, as Ju is playing so fast, that it's a home preparation, so it has to be. But it's a nice surprise. It's a nice way of starting the match, I believe, to pose some questions to the opponent. It's not deadly dangerous for black yet. But still, if you're not prepared at home with these ideas, you can get some surprises in the upcoming moves. So now the question is what to do with black, because it seems like either you go h6, trying to ask questions from the bishop on g5. So what is your journey there? Are you going to capture the knight, which most likely not? But let's say if we just play it out, go bishop h4, and white is really provoking black, right? g5, something you don't want to do. So the main question is after bishop g5, whether can black do anything else than bishop e7? At the same time, if you go bishop e7, what is this g6 making in your position? It's kind of a weakness around, right? Around the king.
Exactly. And you have to, whether you like it or not, you have to defend against the threat of e5. That's a pretty nasty one mover there. So bishop e7 or h6. Okay, so bishop e7 makes me a little bit uncomfortable because I'm thinking about those potential dark square weaknesses on the king side.
Well, after bishop e7, Yeah, of course you have this weakness on g7, which you're not happy with. At the same time, what is White's plan? It's also a question, because sometimes black can just capture everything on e4, and also then we're going to see an exchange with the bishops as well. So that's a question. If White would go e5, I don't know. I'm not sure it works really well, because we should not forget about the unprotected pawn on b2, on e5. So suddenly if White has to be exchanging, then, for example, White would go f4, then I think in b4, for example, it could be a very unpleasant double attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the structure can be very useful for White if White has the time to play queen e2, to castle short, even I would consider maybe long, but that's too much, I guess. To castle short, to stabilize the position, c4, even sometimes b4, or playing just b3 and c4 can be very promising. The main problem in this position for black is this bishop on c8. This can be a problem. Of course, black is trying to play c5 and then go bishop b7, sometimes d4, but usually it's White who is pressing. And so this is a question after bishop g5, what black is going to be playing. And so for June, I think it was a good choice. For the moment, I would think that she made a little surprise her opponent. For game one, it's just a great thing.
Right, and there's history as well. I do remember, I think in game 2 of the 2018 World Championship match, they played some theory, and then at some point, Tan, I think, just almost lashed out. She didn't quite know the exact theory, and she tried to do something different, and she lashed out with some g5. So it's kind of Ju Wenjun's style to play like this. She plays with this kind of concept of harmony, just harmonizing the pieces, not playing necessarily critical concrete moves, and then just keeps passing the ball back onto the opponent where they take that critical decision, and that's when Ju will pounce. So I suspect that, say if black were to go bishop to e7, I don't think she would go e5. She would leave that in her pocket for a little bit longer, and maybe she'd castle, maybe she'll do your queen e2, and then at the right time, she'll be playing e5.
Yes, of course, preparational moves are possible, no question about it, whether it's... And h6, look at that. Provocation works. Because actually Ju plays in a way that she's provoking very much her opponent.
Yeah.
Like I mean, come on, bring your pawns, make your weaknesses, I'm here.
But it's very much in Tan's style. She's like, yes, I will embrace the complications. But here, yeah. And I'm sure what's running through Tan's mind is like, hang on, White just played bishop f4, bishop to g5, right? And
yes.
But this is the beauty of piece maneuvering, is that you haven't actually committed anything. But whereas if you start to push those pawns, they're irreversible decisions. So h6, now weakness on g6 that Ju will be putting in her little basket. And now what
of course,
to do
bishop
next?
h4 was played.
Yes, you want to maintain the tension. And still,
the
e5 is on the agenda.
Sorry, the psychology, I think it's always so interesting in a match. It is really so different than a tournament game. I don't know how many matches have you played, or if you played any matches. But when I played the different matches in the candidates circuit or other matches, it's very tricky. It is very tricky, and actually, it's more tricky for the attacker, I think, who has a style of taking risk or more risk, easy to provoke. It's more dangerous, or it can be more dangerous, because of course every point counts the double. Because if your opponent wins, it means you cannot win as well and catch up. You're losing. So the tension is very different from a tournament. And of course, experience, I think, makes kind of a clear advantage in some ways. And Ju has huge experience because she won the World Championship match in 18, and then she defended 3 times. So she has a huge experience of different situations, mental state, how she overcomes on the difficult moments of a match, right? And of course, it would be lovely for her to gain the lead. But now I'm curious, why was it so important for Black to play h6 first, and only after that to play bishop e7? Is the pawn on h6 really helps favors Black, or it just not a big difference?
I think she was just worried about those dark square weaknesses. She didn't want a bishop posting up on h6 at any particular point in time. You know, sometimes one sees ghosts. Like if we go back to that position where the pawn is on h7, one isn't necessarily calculating, but one is playing by intuition or just kind of visualizing positions in the future. And I can see a scenario where she's thinking, how am I ever going to get castled? And then there's maybe ideas of h4, h5 coming your way. Maybe white wants to go queenside with the king. I don't think so, but you never know. And you just think, let's just get rid of this whole issue and just go h6.
Yeah, maybe this is what was worrying for Tan, that bishop h6 and it stops castling. She didn't want to go back to f8 with the bishop because then she's losing the castling option. Though I'm not sure, but it's an interesting thing that she decided to play h6 and after bishop h4 to play bishop e7. It doesn't
Also,
seem to be
Judit,
so bad for Black at all.
I was going to say also, Judit, you've played match scenarios. So you were mentioning how different they are to your normal tournament scenarios. And we mustn't forget the element of pre-tournament preparation, that you're trying to get out of your opponent's workshop, so to speak, and you want to just play the game on your own. And there you see castles played by Ju Wenjun. And it's not easy, right? Because you always have, what have they prepared for me? What have they done? And who do they have working with them? And these days we have the extra element of the engines uncorking extremely strong ideas.
Well, this is a position, for example, where you can work, and I'm sure everybody's working with engines, getting ideas, and of course it's helpful to brainstorm with the computer. But it's not a typical position where you will get huge surprises, really, or a huge difference between moves. It's more about creating new ideas, little nuances that you can play it out in a game, and you try to understand the position. Because in this position, the most important thing, and the player who understands the ins and outs and the structure better will be able to get the advantage in the game. And this is what really matters, that the players understand the different structures. For example, for the moment, there is a huge tension in the center. So the big question is, who is going to be exchanging the pawns? Obviously, in this position, white is practically never taking on d5 because it would give up the center. It would strengthen the center for Black. But one thing is for sure, it's always a question for white, and also to consider it with Black, whether e5 is dangerous or it's not dangerous. So this is the moment, for example, I would consider in the next move already. Let's say Black goes castle, okay? So after that, already white is going to be thinking about, should I play e5, close the center like this? Black would be going away probably to d7. Now it's a question whether should I go bishop g3 or should I go bishop e7. But we see some a5 move. There is no rush on. So in this position, it's a typical big question. But Black played a5, still withholding the castle because she does think that it's not so important yet. For her, it seems like she wants to keep this option to play bishop a6 and to eliminate the d3 attacker bishop, which is also quite typical. And we mentioned it before, that the problem in this structure, because of the pawn structure of Black, this bishop is the c8 bishop, which can cause trouble and problems. Otherwise, black's position is pretty nice. So this is the reason why she wants to play bishop a6 at some point, I guess.
Yeah, but it also does invite a natural developing move. Queen e2, I love connecting the rooks. So then get the rooks to the center potentially, and just keeping the opponent guessing. I mean, it's a nice position for Ju in the sense that she has the ability to, as you mentioned, push in the center with e5, maximize her pieces, whereas black is very much reactive to whatever white does.
Yes, queen e2 is the most natural move. At the same time, there is another move which is very typical in these kind of positions, to play c4, to put extra pressure in the center, and also bishop a6 would not be a big deal because white is going, let's say, b3. So to keep the bishop still in a cage kind of thing. So it's black is not finding its place for the bishop, the white square bishop. So this is also something that I would consider c4. But queen e2 is indeed, it's a multifunctional move because it stops the move immediately bishop a6, and your rook stands very well, for example, on d1, and only much later to play c4 because the rook can be helpful. Also, the queen on e2 gives the support of pushing the pawn to e5. So this move is very, very logical, of course.
Yeah.
If it would be a bullet game, you would play queen e2, no question about it.
I would play queen e2, and one thing I have noticed, especially in my later years, is just that once you kind of give your opponent choice, that's when people kind of go into that deep dark forest and they confuse themselves. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do anything special. You just kind of, I like your rook to d1. Maybe you're going to play c4. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're going to go e5. Maybe you're just going to build and do the whole wait and see approach. And another plan, which unfortunately white isn't necessarily ready for, is sometimes to take control over the dark squares as well. You know, I've seen like knight to b3, knight to c5. That's a kind of long-term dream at some point.
Yeah, that's, for the moment it's a dream, but for the moment it seems very, very long distance plan. But a5, actually, it's also useful against kind of knight b3, and very rarely it can happen that somehow space advantage can be a lot from white hand. So a5 is something that bishop a6. Also, if white goes c4, b3 at a later stage, black can move a4 with the pawn. So that can be also useful. The question is how much white will be able to stabilize the position. I think did she play c4? No, she did not play c4. Yeah.
No, she hasn't played anything. She takes her time and keeps the opponent guessing. It's also very good to kind of calm yourself in these scenarios, because I imagine even if you've had like a whole ton of experience, the rush of playing a world championship match is still going to mess with your emotions and your nerves and the tensions. I mean, how did you, Judit, you've played lots of matches and you've been in these high pressure scenarios. How did you cope with the pressure?
Well, you have different moments, of course. First of all, it depends what is at stake. I remember one of my the first match I played, actually, I think it was against Boris Spassky, which was the most memorable match of my life, probably. No, but I had some other, a lot of few very fun matches. That was the first which was very memorable because I was very young. I was just 16. And playing with Boris Spassky, who just played few months before that against Bobby Fischer, the rematch in Sveti-Stefan. So that was huge. He was very well prepared also. And but it was very nice that I took the lead. After 2 games, I was leading 1.5 half. And that was already something, it gave me self-confidence. We played very interesting games. But after that, I lost, I think, in game 3, and then it was pretty much balanced. But in the middle, I took over, and I won the match, the 10-game match already out of 9 games. I was 5.5, 3.5. And so that was something very nice because I took the lead in the beginning. But also in opening preparation, I was not behind to Boris. We were very well prepared. My coach was Lev Psahis, which means also a lot. Who is your coach and how great ideas he can offer. And in concrete lines, in positional lines, Queen E2 is on the board. So the most logical move was made. Right here. So in match play, this was my first experience, but then I had some nasty experiences also. Like a year later, I was playing against Polugaevsky, a training match, and game 1, I put all my energy into it. I won a beautiful game in the Najdorf, Sicilian, tactics, calculations, everything. But somehow, no, actually it was 92. Maybe it was beforehand. It was maybe 92. Because, that was before my Spassky match. And in the first game, I was like, won a beautiful game. And after that, I didn't win a single game. He was much more experienced. He understood, okay, I have to be careful with this girl. He made a completely different strategy in the next game. And he beat me. I don't remember for how much, but I remember that he didn't win a single game after that because he was more careful. He made the choices with the white pieces accordingly that, okay, I have to take this seriously, not to give her chances. I have to do everything under control. So that was a big lesson. And one of another fantastic match I had, but that was already a rapid match. It was when I played with Anand in 2003 in Germany, in Mainz. It was absolutely amazing because we played 4 days, 2-game matches, and the organizer was a big friend of Vichy, and the trophy of that match was each year a jacket, you know. And the match was going on from Thursday to Sunday. And then the match was going on because I won the first game on Thursday. I lost the second one. Incredible, fantastic, tactical, messy game. On Friday, I won the first game and lost the next one. And then on Saturday morning, they came to me and asked me, what is your jacket size?
Oh, that's cheeky. They hadn't even prepared for you.
I think on Sunday things were closed, so they understood that anything can happen in this match. Because Vichy was winning for a few times already. And then the Saturday I won the first game again. I lost the next one, but on Sunday I lost both games. So actually I lost the match, but it was an amazing match without a draw. But we have a move on the board, which is after Queen E2.
And
Castle.
I've been looking for...
Finally, Castle is there, and Rook D1. So all the natural moves are played.
Yeah, and Ju has a position where she is in control of the pace of the game. If she wants to, she can put pressure on the center with c4. She can also advance, push pawn to e5, and she very much holds the cards. And I think that this is the perfect place to take our first break. Now, the opening moves have been played. The stage has been set. It's been game 1 of the Women's World Championship FIDE 2025, and we're going to go on a short break. And when we come back, we're going to take you through more of the action.
When competing against strong players who'd previously said dismissive things about women chess players like Garry Kasparov or Nigel Short, for instance, did you feel the need to try extra hard to beat them to prove a point? Was there any other group of players you had any kind of grudge against? Well, I grew up and it was very natural that people were not accepting really that small girls are competing with men. And Susan was kind of the icebreaker in this in the beginning. For me, it was already much easier to play in the open section. But of course, I remember that I had to prove it much more time that I can play well, and I'm not there in those tournaments by chance, but I belong there. In some cases, of course, it was more challenging and I was more ambitious to show. So, of course, when I was playing against Kasparov, it was a huge challenge and I wanted more than anything to play a game or play games that I really show great fight, and eventually I even won. I also had cases where not so strong players at all, men had some sexist remarks, or you knew the way they were thinking about little girls. Okay, you win, but you were lucky, and they were expressing these kind of thoughts. So then the victory was more tasty even. But generally speaking, I was more focusing on the game and give the maximum I can and score the maximum I can.
Hi, I'm International Master Ivanka Hauske, and welcome to my first course for Chessable, starting out the Caro-Kann. Light square strategy is what I like to call it. You put your pawns on light squares, you develop your pieces, and then when the time is right, you break out in the center. What I need you to do is get in the focus of quick development. Knight takes g7, check is possible, king moves to f8, attacking the knight, and now after knight to h5, what we want to be doing is first asking that question to the knight, because white can immediately go wrong with knight to e2. We simply go knight to b4, and this bishop and the knight have orchestrated a sneak attack against c2, and now black is totally winning. There are lifelines to help you remember the piece configurations, there are guidelines, there are cautionary tales, and of course there are my trademark phrases, all to help you get a good Caro-Kann. And we are back in Shanghai for the FIDE Women's World Championship match between reigning Women's World Champion Ju Wenjun playing with the white pieces against challenger Tan Zhongyi. It is Deja Vu 2025, and I'm so pleased. I have a straight view to these two players. I'm your host, International Master Ivanka Hauske, and of course, we are blessed to have the legendary Grandmaster, that is Judit Polgar, ready to share her wisdom, stories, and of course, all those chess tips.
Yeah, hi. Hi back, everyone. We are excited to be here on game one, which just finished the opening phase of the game, right?
Yes. And if I were to mark it in tennis scores, I would say advantage Ju Wenjun. just because it can easily be neutralized. Let's nothing critical just yet, but it's just because Ju Wenjun has a kind of position where she can slowly build up. She can just choose whether she wants to actually initiate play in the center with c4. That would be very concrete. e5 would determine the pawn structure, and she can take her time about it, whereas Tan has to simply react. And an active player such as Tan, it's not going to be easy for her to just sit there and wait it out. She will want to be doing something, being active with her pieces. And that's not easy to do in this type of position. And just as I say that, we have a move. I love it when the players show us their cards. So knight to d7, offering a trade of bishops.
Yes, I think what we can say that Ju can be very happy and proud of her preparation, because she did what she had to do in game one. She surprised her opponent a bit. She has a very stable position, very pleasant position, suits her style, and basically she couldn't get anything better than this after move 12. And I'm not sure her opponent is very happy. Tan must be, well, okay, we have to get something, right? But it's not something that you're so happy with. And it's also very tricky for a tactical and forward player to play this with black, because you have to be very careful how you kind of trying to create the tactical vision in this position, because White's position is just so stable that it is very difficult to do anything. So if White is playing extremely solid, then there will be not necessarily much opportunity. So now there is a big question, a decision to be made by White, right? What should I do with this bishop? Should I be taking on e7, or should I go back to g3? Because now the game will go to a very different path if you go here or there. So bishop e7 is generally the logical, the first thing you're kind of thinking. At the same time, after exchanging the bishops, the black square bishops, then black kind of relieves, somehow can breathe better. And after that, black's plan would be definitely very clear. I believe bishop b7, playing c5, playing active, possibly queen to f6 can be a very useful square for the queen. And White's question is if White would have the time to play e5 and to play c4, possibly b3, f4. It can be a massive queen to put the queen to e3. I think it can be a nice square. It can be something that White has the space advantage and pressing the black's position quite a bit, right? So this is the first thing that White is taking into account. Of course, after e5, we have to see whether is there any concrete things black can do. For example, queen b4, and after that to attack the pawn on e5. So I'm not sure I like it so much from White perspective to give up the tension and play e5. So the other option is to go bishop g3, thinking that this g6, h6 is not too beneficial for black. At the same time, I'm not sure it's going to be a real weakness. If black is going to be later on king g7, it can be also something that even useful, especially if White would be playing e5. But after having the bishop on g3, you don't want to go e5, right, to block the diagonal of the bishop. So there are pros and cons for this and that. I would consider bishop g3 very seriously, to be honest.
Okay, so it's my big question there, because I like bishop g3 in principle, and I almost feel that White will be setting up the move c4. The rook is on d1, and the tactician inside me, or the cheap trickster, is looking at, potentially sacrificing the bishop on g6. As soon as she went h6, I was like, oh, weakness. And so I was thinking, if you give White time, White might be going c4, e takes d5 at the right time. Everything has its moment, and then some kind of explosion happening on the king side. And so I was thinking, is it possible for black after bishop to g3 to actually go, let's just nip that idea in the bud and go knight c5. And I know the knight has been on a huge odyssey, and I know the knight is a great defender of the king, but the bishop on d3, is it worth carrying on?
Yeah, I understand that you're thinking of grabbing my bishop on d3, that it can be unpleasant. And of course, this is something that white has to take in account, that it's possible. But let's say if I go f4, I'm still not okay with this bishop, I have to admit. Later on, I will have to go here, or if I don't go f4, what else? No, actually, knight c5 is very sensible move. And indeed, if I would exchange the bishops on e7, after that, knight c5 maybe is not so dangerous and captured because there can be weaknesses on c5. While if you keep the bishop on e7, there is no danger for a long time having any. Talking about weaknesses on c5, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So which one? Well, we should just deep dive into one of them. So let's have a look at this version. So knight c5, and what is white going to do?
Maybe I would go c4 actually.
Okay. Knight
but
takes
I'm not
bishop.
sure it takes, and bishop a6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how to go on with white. Black has a very normal position. Very normal position. And I don't see how white can really make advantage of these so-called weaknesses.
No, not now the bishop is on g3. So
Yes, because the bishop should be standing on e3 in these positions. So it's kind of, after all this journey, what it did, going to f4, g5, h4, and now to g3, it's quite a lot of moves. But let's say after knight c5,
can you play incredibly aggressively? And I know this is not Ju's style, but f4. Okay, Ricky won. That's I will refrain from my f4, f5 ideas.
No, actually, I like f4 very much, but the problem is that after f4, you're going to grab my bishop on d3.
Yes, and then here I was thinking...
And it's not possible to take with the queen because of bishop a6.
Yeah, bishop a6. Yeah, you have to take with the pawn.
Yeah, so I have to take with the pawn, which is quite all right. I'm not complaining. But still, after taking... f5 is still not really a threat. And you know what? Even black can play sometimes f5.
Yeah. And
now
a5.
it would be so early.
And I'm suddenly loving this a5 because, you
yeah,
you
that's
want to go
nice.
knight b3, knight c5, and, black is already there with a5 ready to go a4. Yeah, okay. So
no, but I think in this position, for example, black could go c5. As an idea, and then it's not so easy to play. But by the way, I have a question. Can't black just play queen b6 check and take the pawn? I don't think it's poisoned.
Yeah, well, I don't know. King h1, and then after queen takes b2, kind of
Let's take
go in for the penny, in for the pound, f5.
f5.
Go. Yes.
You provoked me. I went in there.
Yep.
No, white has some compensation, of course. And black lost some time.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how really great it is. I go queen g7, let's say.
Okay.
Wow, the bar likes it so much.
Well, I
that
do get the
you-
dark squares, right? I have some trades, and then I'm just thinking of trying to get in a bishop to e5 at the right time. But maybe
Why you
I
want to
don't
go
even need
here?
to do that. Maybe I should no. I'm thinking now I should be patient. I should not be eager to spoil things. And maybe you can go rook c1 and ask the questions to those weak pawns. Oh, okay.
Well, white has compensation for sure. I mean, FG6 I think also makes a lot of sense. So maybe Queen B6 is not a good direction to go for black, which means that it's a nice idea to play. It's kind of a provocation also again. But as now we see that white is actually hesitating and went behind in time.
Yeah.
So she's a minute behind. But of course, she has plenty of time to think about the position. There's nothing concrete. It's very strategical. And
Okay. And maybe we can take back f4 because that's might be.
I'm sorry,
my
just
style.
one moment, that I think f5 might be interesting with the knight keeping it on c5, because I will be able to jump into e4. I would consider it with black here, especially having this fantastic bishop, which looks like more of a pawn right now.
Yeah. No, f4, it leaves behind weak squares. And it's also not Ju Wenjun style. Ju Wenjun doesn't normally go for immediate concrete action. She will just be harmonizing the pieces. So, okay, I think bishop g3 is normal. Knight c5. Or should we go? I saw you taking on e7.
Yes, because I believe that she's going to be taking on e7.
Okay.
I think
let's go
she's going to be e7. And I thought let's discover a little bit that part also, so we are kind of ready when she's playing that. I would make my bet that she's going to capture it. What do you think?
Okay.
You would also
Yes,
think that capture, or you go
I
bishop
would
g?
think that I would think that she's going to get captured just so that she doesn't lose time, and also so that she can maybe fight against this idea of knight c5 by pushing a quick c4, again just keeping the tension. Because if it
Well, now I think it's either c4 or f4, because f4 I think it is also an interesting way. So f4 can be also. Of course, after f4 is diagonal. I don't like. All kind of checks can happen.
yes,
C4.
as long as one is tactically aware. So c4 I think is more her style.
And c4 is more in the spirit of the position right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because now black has to make a decision also. Are you going to play d4? Now, ever? Probably for now it's not a good choice. Because white can go e5. The e4 is free for the knight. For later, I go f4, knight e4, and it can be quite pleasant position.
Yeah.
But still, I was always considering all these kind of moves d4 at some point. Then, because now if you keep the tension, you always have to think about it. Is it cd5 which will bother me? Is it e5, e takes d5 which will bother me? So now, for example, black can go bishop b7, protecting the d5 pawn. But as we see, Tan is she's happy with her position, I believe. She's walking, relaxed. I mean, have you ever seen someone walking this way when having a bad position? I mean, the body language of Tan.
Well, as a pacer, I tend to do it regardless of my position. So it doesn't give it a yeah, because you have a lot of nervous. Well, I personally have a lot of nervous energy, and if I'm sat there at the board, then you kind of get wrapped up into the detail, and that's not necessarily the best frame of mind. You want to be a kind of first up, you need to be calming yourself down because emotion shouldn't really be playing a role in chess. And secondly, you just need to be getting yourself into that very kind of calm frame of mind where you're zooming in to the position, looking at the details, but also looking at the bigger picture and not forgetting that there are two people playing this game. This is one of my common mistakes. I forget that it's not just me. It's not all about what I want. And then when my opponent makes a move, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what you were threatening. So I think it's very good to take that distance, that physical distance. That's everyone does what is preferable to them. I think you didn't pace that much when I observed your games. You were kind of set.
I was changing. In some periods, I was pacing more, but it depended very much on the position. If I had a very tense position, I was more sitting there and calculating. And it depended very much on whether it's very concrete and you're trying to calculate ahead. So when your opponent is making the move, then you can play faster. First of all, not losing so much time. Secondly, psychologically, it can be useful if you're reacting faster than your opponent. You give away the information that you give the impression that, well, I'm under control. I know what's going on. I calculated this, right? So, but in this position, it's very positional. It's more goes based on your intuition. Also, many of your decisions in such a position. You will not figure out, you will not calculate it in such a position whether is my bishop standing better on b7 or a6. I mean, you're calculating, but not concrete lines, right? You're trying to get the idea that, well, where will it be standing better in a later stage of the game? It's not concrete. But more you have to understand these kind of positions, where it belongs. And so it's not so concrete calculation. It's more that you're thinking about strategies. And but I felt that Tan, the way she was, I mean, it's different thing that you're standing up and walking, pacing, and you can see that you're ticking, you're calculating, even that you're away from the board. Or you're just happy with your position. Okay, I'm waiting what my opponent will be moving. You see, like in this position, after this is the right now. Now there is not much sense for black to really think, because if bishop g3, it has a completely different game than if after bishop e7. So actually you may think that, okay, I sit and wait. Anyway, I know that, okay, after bishop g3, I go knight c5, bishop e7, queen e7, I will decide. So maybe it's not worth spending the energy of calculating really which is the best for white, because it's a strategical decision in some ways. That Ju says that in game one, no, I want to go for a tough and sharpy thing and go bishop g3. Or bishop e7, I'm kind of happy with that. It's solid. We're going to be playing it out. If it's a draw, no problem. It's a warming up game.
So just to kind of get into your mind when you were playing chess, say you had this type of position where it's probably not the best use of energy to calculate, two different variations. You should wait until that happens on the board. So you have like this almost dead time where you have to keep yourself occupied. And what did you do?
Well, still you're thinking about the game, of course, but I think it's just in principle. You're not calculating it really concretely. And we have bishop e7 on the board as expected.
You were right to stake all you had on bishop takes the bishop. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, not losing time. That bishop could have been a bad piece further along down the line. And it's decision time again for Ju, because she can, as Judith mentioned, play f4, she can go c4, or she can keep the position flexible that little bit longer. Do you think we might see, maybe b3? I was thinking also c3 and, try to play with pieces and wait it out even more.
Well, for black, it's always a question. Let's say if you don't play b3, but you play c3 or c4, but there is Black going to play rook b8 and put pressure on the b file, and even then a4 keeps that in mind. Or and actually we have c4 on the board. Very logical, very much in the spirit of the position. So white is not rushing with b3, strengthening the c4 pawn, because a4 simply would be a great simplification for black, and once those pawns would be disappearing from the a file, it would be extremely beneficial for black, having the rook not moved from there, and then it can come to a2. So for white, this is the challenge, at least, that what to do with this b2 pawn, because a5, as Tan played it some moves ago, it is beneficial for a later stage of the game. So it was not concretely very important for her, but it's very important to get her be ready after, at some point, if white plays b3.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Now black has to make the decision. Rook b8 is a very logical move to play. Then what else? Bishop b7, we discussed that it's also possible, and with the idea to play c5. Usually we don't like so much to play bishop b7 because it doesn't seem so nice for the moment, biting into your own pawns. But if you have a futuristic plans and you see the future, that one day, let's say if e5 and someday c5, and this bishop will get a role, it can be very appealing also.
Right. And I would say that's more of a strategical player's style. So bishop b7, long-term ideas of c5. But Tan, she's so active, I suspect that she'll be going rook to b8. Why not get those tempo moves in and ask the decision from Ju? What is she going to do with that b2 pawn?
And at the same time, it may be a kind of a blunder because it's tactical now on the e file. You see? Maybe we can take here, capture, rook b2, and he takes on e6.
That is true. I always need to look one move further. And yeah, this is, unfortunately, the pawn on g6 is dropping.
So rook b8 was a theoretical idea by me. Generally, rook b8 is a very common move for concrete reasons, probably either bishop b7 or moving the queen. Knight c5 also possible, by the way.
Yeah, knight c5, you can go e takes d5. And again,
but then I want to take. And after that, I was considering to take. Bishop a6.
Ah, okay, and then bishop a6. Aha.
And after knight c4, I don't know. I think some simplification can work for black. For example, rook d8 is possible. But I think maybe I can just take, and white can't really take because of rook d8. And there are some problems for white. Or could be. Yeah, this is always a problem for white, and white has to look after. If the black knight on c5 and the rook is still on f1, that this bishop on a6 can give a headache for white.
That is very, very true. And does white want to preserve that bishop? Because my instinct is to go bishop to b1, get it out of harm. I'm reluctant to trade it off because the knight on c5 I see as being a little bit tactically vulnerable to queen e3 ideas, targeting h6 and c5.
But for example, now I was considering to go e5. I think it's not good yet. But let's say if you would not be able to take on d5 and I could play e5 and d4, black is taking over. Because suddenly the white bishop is biting into its e4 pawn and doing nothing. And suddenly the c8 bishop, wow, what a powerful bishop, right? So things can change and shift very fast. But I think after bishop b1, bishop a6 maybe is the best move. because as we talked about it, this can be very unpleasant for white, this spin.
Yeah.
Actually, I would be surprised if not knight c5 would be standing on the board in the next move. That seems to be the logical one. Well, okay, after bishop a6, white goes rook f1. And we see knight e5. Knight e5. Well, probably the reason is that, well, with the same idea that white can't really take on d5. We'll check why not. But the other idea is that she didn't like white to play e5. That's probably what she was worried. So let's see what happens on e takes d5, knight d3, and we are just transposing to the position we just looked at. After cd5.
And let's just run through the lines again. So cd5, bishop a6. There are no queen moves, so knight to c4. And then
well, maybe queen move is better to sacrifice the exchange. I'm not sure, but I think, I mean, intuitively, even without looking lines, which obviously we are, but having this bishop in such an active way and having this pin, it just, you feel it that black cannot be worse, for sure. Simply, there is no way. Of course, there is a way if she plays badly, but if she plays well, it's just at least full compensation. And after this, we didn't look further because I think actually it's not easy for white. I mean, probably white has to go queen c6, and white is still alive because rook. This one cannot be played because of the bishop is hanging. And, oops, sorry. And if rook dc8, then queen d6 seems to be a reasonable saving move. Because after takes, white can grab on d6. And while this is hanging, that is hanging also on c8. So white is saving.
But I don't know whether saving is... It does feel like it's better for black in that line because the rook can get to c2. And
yeah, but it's not going to be more than equality. It's just a simplification. I go king f1.
No, you could do it one move earlier. You could keep the bishop.
Ah, you mean here?
Yeah, you can just come rook c2.
You go here, rook takes b2. But okay, my knight is also not so bad. I don't know, probably I go a4. Well, it's definitely black who is playing, no question about it. I don't know, maybe I go knight e8, knight c7, rook e7.
Yeah, the knight can be annoying, but it does feel like the upper hand is with black in that particular line.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this is what I wanted to get to, that after having, I mean, if you're playing it with white, you know that after this, if this is the first line you're looking at, you say, no, I have to check something else. There should be something better than this. So you go back and you don't calculate further necessarily because you want to find something more convenient for you. You don't want to be the underdog from now on in this game. So the question is what to do.
Okay. So
should white play f4?
Yes, let's take control of those dark squares and try to get a bind.
This is one way of handling it.
And now bishop a6.
Yeah, bishop a6 is always there. The thing is actually that I don't like this f4 because my king is weak. This diagonal is still bothering me. And I will not have enough attack anyway with this kind of moves. So if I don't have all those things, then why to waste time with that? So let's go back to knight e5, what is actually standing on the board. And let's see. For example, I think bishop cannot move away because immediately black would be simply capturing on c4. And now again, white is who is playing for survival because it's not possible to take it because of bishop a6, losing material. So bishop b1 is not possible.
Yeah, I was just going to go quickly to that line. I just wanted to say how we will then kind of regale a5 as a moment of genius, because if you do take on c4, after knight takes pawn, knight takes, pawn takes. So say white goes, that doesn't matter. Compensation. Those are two doubled pawns. I just go e5, get a rook on d6. That will bring me a lot of joy. But you can still bishop a6.
Yeah.
And a5. C3 is now in the air.
Yeah. Yeah. So white has to look for something else. We go back to the game position, knight e5. So b3, for example, is a very sensible continuation, I think.
But it does invite a4.
But also, if we go back to the position, what about rook e1?
Makes a whole ton of sense. So let's have a look at knight takes bishop, the most.
And there is another idea still I have. Okay. One more before we go into this. What happens if I take with the pawn? You go knight d3.
And you throw in d6.
d6. But then knight f4. Knight f4 intermediate move. And wherever we go, queen d6 defending the knight. So this is a good moment. But after knight d3, let's say I take back. I don't know if we have anything else. It's kind of a nice moment, but I don't see anything else. Okay, queen d3, you go c takes d5. And what about playing now rook e1?
And black captures.
Yeah, but if you have to capture, it's what he takes d5 on the board, by the way. So we are going to see this position in a few seconds, I think. Exactly, knight d3. So let's follow how fast they are playing out. There is not much to do. Queen takes d3. Yeah.
And
so let's see what's going to be the decision of you to play rook e1 to enter into this very dangerous position after c takes d5. So okay, I wanted to check rook e1. And the idea is if bishop b7, I want to take, and you cannot take back with the bishop because I have these tactics, right? So the queen on e7 is pinned, right? So this is the very simple basic tactic. So after cd5, you can go probably, though, to go rook d8. And this can make me unhappy from white side, because if you take it next with the bishop or rook. But okay, I go queen e3. What about rook d5? I'm not sure I like
take
this.
pawn on h6 and rook to g5. And
though rook d8 can be also very unpleasant. Rook d8 is a killer, because now this pin is giving me a big problem.
Headache, yeah. Yeah, you're not going to untangle from that one. So
no. So then bishop b7 is actually not a bad move at all after rook e1.
Wait. What happens if you go knight e4? Let's start circling around those dark squares.
Okay, rook d5.
Rook 2-5 and... Now,
But it's clear that black has black is having a great position, right? I mean, look at this bishop. This is what we're talking about. It was being so passive for such a long time, and it's the best possible square where it can stand and be powerful.
yeah.
But white doesn't have to be so bad. That I agree. I don't know if you can play queen e3 because rook e5 is not possible to knight f6 tactics. So this is fortunate for white, which means it can be pretty much okay for white because now the g6 actually gives weaknesses.
Yeah, you can also double up on the D line, but we do have a move from queen e3. Oh, that's a nice move. Getting
That's
out
a
of the
good
pin.
move. Actually, that's a very good move. That's a very good move. And now finally pinpointing on the weakness, and suddenly it's a double attack because once it's a funny double attack because it threatens to go queen h6, and the other attack is because of the pin on the e file by taking c takes d5. And this might be something that she also didn't see.
It's an easy move to miss. It wasn't on our... We did see queen e3, but we didn't see it immediately here. But okay. Okay, so there's a concrete threat. Attack h6, pawn takes d5. Okay, so let's just go pawn takes c4. Or I can go...
But the thing is, if you take on c4, I think, maybe h6 is better to take. But now it's black who has to be looking after her position. Let's say bishop a6.
Yes. And now the knight comes swinging over to g5 via e4 or f3.
Yeah, suddenly there are weaknesses, right?
And rook d7 is on the agenda as well. Problems.
Okay, so rook d8, knight g5. But actually, after knight g5, black can simply go queen f6, yeah?
Yeah.
And it's not the end of the world at all for black. Somehow everything is defended because black can escape with the king.
Actually, if black manages to withstand the pressure on the king's side, then they are going to be the ones having all the trumps in the endgames. The pawn on c4 is so strong. The rook can come to b8.
Yeah. Here, it's kind of the dead end of the attack of white, right? So let's go back. Queen e3, d takes c4, queen h6, bishop a6.
What about, can you go knight takes? No, okay. I was thinking of going knight takes c4 with ideas of rook d4 and rook
here.
h.
No, but this is
doesn't work.
No,
doesn't work.
The idea is good, but you're giving up too much.
Yeah, rook fc8.
I know it's not your rook, so you can sacrifice them, or we can sacrifice them, but she will not sacrifice it. No. Over optimistic. But sorry. Let's go back to the position. Queen e3 on the board, and now, black can also go queen g5, which is not the first move I would think of, but it's also an option to play. I don't know what will be the outcome of that. Let's say takes. I wanted at first to go rook d8 to be active. Because if white would be taking, then it's just beautiful for black. And after b3, black goes a4. I'm going to be simplifying that it's good. So after rook d8, knight e4, yeah?
Knight f3. Knight e4, knight f3.
You want? Which one you want?
I wanted knight f3.
Knight
Just because I
f3.
wanted to.
Knight f3.
Maybe you can just go f6. Just to control the knight
Possible.
e5.
Yeah, knight e5 is not allowed. g5 is protected. King is coming to f7 towards. Yeah, in this kind of position, even if black has a pawn down, the bishop can be so powerful, especially if it comes to e6 and this pawn on a5 pushes a4, that it's no real danger for black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. The rooks and the bishops, they work incredibly well together. And yeah, I was listening to a lecture the other day where it was quite funny, actually, Judit. I recommend that you. Anyway, I won't name the grandmaster in question, but he would look to the camera and deliver a one-liner. And this particular one-liner was knights like control, bishops like activity. And then he would continue with the analysis. And it just is perfect here. The bishop likes activity. It likes to be dynamic. And we have a move, queen to g5, as you
Queen
suggested.
to g5. Actually, we see we are witnessing a pretty good game.
And we are back, and our apologies for that little technical interlude. Yeah, we just had to fix a few things, but we are back. And as we saw, we just left you with black playing queen to g5. And Ju Wenjun, she has yet to make a move. She has decisions to make. Does she trade queens? Does she avoid the trade? And she will try to squeeze out any possible advantage from this position. But as we see, the evaluation bar there on the left is telling us it's very, very level.
Yes, I think now again White has a big moment because she has to make a decision whether to exchange the queens on g5, and then most likely it's going to be a draw because Black has a lot of activity in the game, or she's not exchanging the queens, but then where to go with the queen, where to move away. Black squares are very essential in this game, as we were talking about it from the very beginning, since black played g6. So in this position, maybe queen c3 is something to consider, to keep the option for white to control something. So, for example, d takes c4 would be a huge mistake because of knight e4, it comes with the tempo, and knight f6. So queen c3 may be something to be considered. And then the question is, black is going bishop b7, as it would stand perfectly fine. Can white go c5 at some point and have a passed pawn, which could be extremely useful if she could have the knight on e5 or the e4 supporting that pawn on c5, c6. But of course, these are just kind of dreams from white's perspective. But still, it's something to consider. And it is very interesting in these kind of positions that if we would have an extra pair of pawns on e4 and c6, the position is a lot different, because then the bishop has much less power. But after having the exchange of these pawns on e4 and c6, there are new ideas coming up here.
Yeah,
probably knight f3 can
definitely.
be. Sorry.
Right. No, the one thing that you mentioned there is that d4 is a possibility for black because of the bishop and the queen aligning itself on g2. So that would be a checkmating a threat already on the board if white were to allow that. So I do feel that knight to f3 is a very good defensive move. And now the queen will step. This is always the trouble in life. Do you go forward or do you step backwards? And so I'm the chicken. So I'm kind of like two sides to my personality. And the chicken says, go back to e7, just keep everything tight and then let the rooks do the action. So, nope. She has, in fact, this is all a bit hearsay because Ju has made a decision. She's decided to trade queens. It is the first game. It's the first game out of 12. A draw isn't a bad idea. And also, it does mean that Ju will have tested Tan Zhongyi. Well, she's tested her e4.
But look at that Tan was not even hesitating and thinking for a second and captured back e takes d5. And we were looking rook d8, looking for initiative to sacrifice a pawn. Because in this position, okay, black has an isolated pawn, right? White played rook e1. I mean, if this was the option and this is what was obvious for them. So I think e takes d5 was not an accurate move. I would think. Maybe I'm wrong. But actually, after e takes d5, I thought white would be going somehow knight b3 and knight b3 and immediately take control over and blockade the pawn, or go knight c5.
Right, but one thing I just wanted to point out that we were looking at many lines where black was just giving up the d pawn, and maybe you don't have to think about the defense. Oh, this is a nice defense that you're showing us. Bishop a6, bishop d4.
But I'm not sure it's so good, you know. For example, there is a funny option to play knight d4, bishop takes, rook a1, and b3. Because this d4 knight as blockading the d5 pawn, it can give some energy and unpleasantness to this bishop. Because for this bishop, space is much more important than having this extra d5 pawn. So it could be kind of tricky, but it was interesting for me that e takes d5 was played instantly without hesitation. I like to say when I'm teaching that weaker players, stronger players, that when you have a capture back or giving a check, or the most natural move is so natural, right? But usually it's capturing back. Spend some minutes, some seconds, or even a minute. Just think about it. Is there another option? And for me, actually, the first alternative was to go rook d8, because I like initiative so much more and I don't like such a pawns like this one. Maybe it's okay for black completely, But I just don't like it because I can visualize it. If the knight goes to, well, not this way, but this way, if it goes to d4, it's just a horror. It can be horror for black.
I absolutely agree with you. And I was just going to say, it was actually one of the trademarks of the Chinese chess school, which they would not hold on to weak pawns. They would sacrifice it in order to get activity. Activity was the most important thing. So it is a little bit of a surprising decision there from Tan. But I have to kind of clarify a little bit more. I fully suspect that Tan has no intention of trying to defend that pawn, and will, if possible, sacrifice it in order to get activity for the bishop. Try to put it on e6 once it's been captured. And is that a move? Rook to e1, a very Ju Wenjun move, and she wants to maximize the position. She wants to get a rook onto the 7th rank. That's where they belong. And questions again.
It seems like a very positional position, right? At the same time, I think it can be extremely tactical. And not from the point of view, as we know, that it's tactical, that you're sacrificing and so on and so forth. But who is taking activity? Is White going to be reaching with her knight to d4? Can she stabilize the rooks? Let's say the other rook goes to c1. Let's say if she could enter only to c5, not even to c7, stabilize the pawn structure with b3, a4, then White would have a huge advantage. So this is the question. It shouldn't be enough time. I think Black should be in time for counter chances. But now the next 3 moves, it's essential whether White is gaining the long-term position where she can press for a long time, or Tan will be able to get out of with her pieces, getting activity, and nothing like that would happen from White side, that the White rooks and the knight gets active. So now it's a critical moment.
Definitely, because here, as you mentioned, Black needs to take those active decisions. Because if you make a random move like bishop e6, you're like, yay, defend the pawn on d5, stop a rook getting into e7. I feel like this is already a step in the wrong direction, because as you're going to point out, the knight is going to come into d4 with tempo. And yeah, you might be okay by curling up into a little ball and defending absolutely everything, but it's pretty miserable way to play. And White is the one who has all the expansion possibilities, the idea of improving the king, the rooks. It's so natural and easy play for White, and you don't want to find yourself in that kind of position.
Yeah, it's interesting that what kind of outcomes we can see if, let's say, Black is just playing a very simple way. So what I was thinking, what happens if White can go a4, let's say b3. Maybe even this is not so simple for White because the king is very much far away and it would have to be very near, because Black has all kind of counter chances. Also, I think maybe rook b4 can be played, so there is an attack over the d4 knight. The d4 knight cannot move because of the b3 is hanging. So actually Black has a lot of activity for the moment. And actually this g4 pawn stands extremely well, restricting White.
It restrains
moves. Yeah.
Restrains the pawns and the king as well, because if that didn't exist, you'd go f3, king f2.
Yeah. So I don't. There are a lot of options for Black. Black can go a4, for example. What do you think about that? Having the idea to play rook b8 and immediately posing questions to White. It's also an interesting idea.
Right. That was also my instinct. Just forget about this pawn on d5, get active with your rooks. Okay, so now let's get active with the white pieces. So let's go knight to f3, let's just say.
Yeah, knight f3, then I guess rook b8. First idea comes in mind.
Rook d2.
Well, and if rook d2, then Another question, whether, let's say, pushing g4, we go knight d4, what about, after a4, maybe I can try to get to c4. So it looks at first that it's very nice for white. At the same time, there are a lot of tactics. For example, I'm thinking about rook e3, how good it would look on the third rank. At the same time, suddenly black would go rook c8, and having the bishop on the diagonal, having the pawn on g4. Suddenly it's like, it's dead for white. I understand that it's exaggeration what I'm showing now. I'm just saying that it can get in a second vulnerable position for white. And this g4 pawn is there.
It's doing a good job restraining the king side. And I like this whole idea because, white doesn't have a free hand to do what they want to do. Just to check out what happens if white just goes for gold, and goes knight c6. I have the very, very subtle idea of going knight e7 and taking the d5 pawn.
Yeah.
That was it. There was nothing deeper than that.
Well, the only problem is that usually I don't care about my pawn on d5. Usually, before I just wanted to give that to you.
Yes.
And suddenly there is a pin. I'm going to be doubling on d8.
I have an idea. Rook to d4. I can get out of that pin. Ish. No.
Because of what?
I was
a4?
thinking rook takes a4. Yeah, but that doesn't work. Bishop b5.
Yeah, but if bishop b7 is an easier way of doing things.
Yeah.
So white has to be careful. Even if you win the pawn, it means that you're spending time to capture it with the knight, go 2-3 moves. So it's not necessarily a big game for white.
No.
It's a very tricky situation, because it seems that if white is reaching some kind of strategical squares for the knight and the rooks, it will be extremely good. But I think it's a 8-move or 10-move plan which would give comfortable situation for white. Having the knight on d4, having the one of the rook on c5, let's say, doubling on c1 with the other rook, playing f3 and bring the king to the center, and having b3 and a4. And in that situation, white is really having a good position. But it's like an endless number of moves. Black will not allow that at all. But the question is what she's up to. Because now she has to make a decision. a4, g4, rook b8, bishop b6, and it's all very sensible. So she has to make a decision and then follow that path.
Yeah. And Judit, she's made a move. She's played rook to b8. And it is a classic battle between the knight and the bishop. The knight, as you mentioned, wants to control all the squares, keep everything calm and controlled. The bishop wants to unleash chaos. And there we see Ju Wenjun. She is contemplating how she's going to defend the b pawn. And as I speak, she pushes that pawn one square forward. And again, if Ju Wenjun is given time, maybe she's going to be looking even at backward knight moves, or knight b1, knight c3. Again, anything the knight can do to establish a calm control over the game. Well, interesting endgame ahead of us. And whilst the players are thinking, we are going to take this opportunity to remind you that something special is coming your way. Because we're going to remind you to tune in to the President's Cup on April 5th and 6th, as 4 of the strongest teams in college chess face off for the UCF College Team Championship, including St. Louis University, fresh off their championship win in the Collegiate Chess League. Use President's Cup or visit go.chess.com/President's Cup for more info. And we'll see you on the CCL streams on Twitch and YouTube. And on that note, we are going to take a short break. And when we come back, it's going to be in-game time.
We have some ChatGPT questions for you.
You've risen quickly through the ranks of elite chess. What do you think has been the key to your rapid improvement? I think it's just that I love what I'm doing, and I spend most of my time with chess, and I'm mostly curious about chess, and I try to learn something every day. So I think that is the key to my improvement and in general. What role does mental resilience play in your success, and how do you stay mentally strong during long and exhausting games? Yeah, for sure. Any sport or any field in life, I think being mentally tough is quite important these days. And for sure, I've had a lot of tough moments, like a really long game that I've lost, and I had to play a next game against a very strong opponent. Like a lot of these situations, and I think being able to let go and just focus on what's important at the moment is quite important. And staying strong in long games, I'm generally able to outplay my opponents the longer the games go. And I think being physically and mentally strong, being able to focus for long periods of time is quite important. How much time do you typically dedicate to opening preparation versus middle game tactics and endgames? I think at this level, it's most of the time is dedicated to openings. But as I'm still young and evolving, I do spend quite some time with middle game, analyzing my games, etc., and studying endgames as well. But yeah, I think most of the time, by a large margin, is spent on opening preparation. If you could compete in a tournament against any historical chess player, who would it be and why? I've always wanted to compete against Fischer, because I consider him the greatest genius of chess has ever seen, and I think it would be it's an experience. It's just I think very special for any chess player, and Fischer has played. I think the stories and the games I've seen of him, I've heard about him, have really impacted me a lot. So yeah, it would be Fischer.
Wear your love of chess on your sleeve with all new apparel and accessories from the chess.com merch store. Maybe you simply want a clock that will never run out, or a mousepad that will finally unlock your speed chess potential. Whether you play chess to get energized with your morning coffee, or play into the wee hours of the night and witness the occasional alien abduction, we've got something for every king, queen, and knight in shining armor. Even gift cards for your loved ones who've caught the chess bug. So check out the chess.com shop for apparel, accessories, and more. Grab your favorites before they're gone.
The London system haters better start looking for a place to hide after this video. Eyes wide open, this is pure fire, folks. And Grandmaster Pepe Cuenca, and this masterpiece of a game was played between Tan Zhongyi and Bai Shali at the Candidates Tournament. The battle starts off with a bank, a London Jobaba system. A6 is necessary before knight c6, just to stop knight b5. Hey, don't hang all your pieces, my friend, I'm watching you. After the exchange of light square bishops, we land in a pretty solid position, the only imbalance the pawn structure. After a3, white begins a beautiful knight reroute, heading for d3, a dream square. It controls the b4 break, it controls e5, and even sets up a little knight detour to f4 to start knocking on the black king's door. Trick or treat, baby. Then comes a4, and black locks down the queen side, so now white basically has a free license to party on the king side. Phase 1, kick the intruder out of our house with f3, no trespassing allowed. Phase 2, launch the knight into attack. This is Sparta! We avoid piece trades, because let's be honest, that's boring, and the queen gets in on the action too. After knight h5, the first real threat hits, queen to g5. Now g5 is a great move. Open up some lines, bring the pain. Black tries to close it all up, but positionally speaking, this is a total train wreck. After knight f4, if black plays something slow like knight c7, white goes knight g6, and then knight f6, and boom, mate with tomato, avocado, and a little spicy mayo. Baishali, desperate, throws in e5, but knight f6 is a knockout punch. Black resigns here, since after king g7, knight takes e7 comes, followed by gf6, winning some material. And that's all she wrote. Lights out.
And we are back in Shanghai for game one of the FIDE Women's World Championship match. It's a dazzling city where technology meets culture, and here talking about technology and dynamism and everything we were discussing just before the break, the battle between the knight and the bishop, how the knight wants to keep control, the bishop wants to accelerate play, and Tan Zhongyi having the bishop, having that endgame and that need to press forward has done exactly just that in the last few moves. So we've had a few moves. Judit, let's rewind and see what has taken place.
Yes, in the last few minutes, we have witnessed a few moves since then. White just played b3 when we left off. And Black Tan played g4, which was a very logical continuation. And we were discussing about this g4 pawn, that it gives a very special spice to the position. And why? Because it's restricting a lot. First of all, it's restricting the knight very clearly, but also for later opportunities for white to make a push with the pawns even. So it's very tricky. It can cause a lot of problems for white if white is not paying attention very carefully. So the big question is what to do with the knight. This is the question. So it was moved immediately to knight to f1, opening up the road to the rook from d1 to d5. So probably it wants to jump to e3 and attack the pawn on d5. Very logical continuation, I believe. a4. So Tan plays very energetically, true to her style, right? But also I think this is exactly what you need to do in such a position where you have a weakness on d5 and you cannot just sit and wait and something will happen. And now I can say that Black's position is extremely active. But if I would have to make a bet, I would make a bet that this game will end in a draw. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, 100%. Well, actually, let's not be so dramatic. Let's rein that in. 90%. I completely agree. You know, the pawns are going to get traded off, and we're probably going to see a scenario where maybe even the knights and bishop will be swapped off and we'll have rook and 3 against rook and 3. But it's been a very precise game. But let's delve into why a4 is so good. Because first up, white has a choice. You can take on a4 or you can hold firm. So let's look at pawn takes a4.
Yeah, this seems at first the most natural way. And then Black has some question, either rook a8, but after that rook d4 probably still defends on a4. So because of that, I would try to go rook b4 and attack it from the side. And if, let's say, white would be pushing the pawn on a5, then there is a question whether should I go defended d5 with rook d8 or bishop e6, maybe rook d8, and then rook a4, and grab that back the pawns. I mean, there is two options to try to grab. And also the d pawn actually after this could be a good passer as well, if white is not paying attention.
Right, because my immediate move was knight to e3. And then I kind of went, well, hold on, Yovi. d4 it could be coming your way. And there might not be a good answer.
Yeah. So both sides have to be careful. But I think one thing is sure, that rook b4 would be the reaction on capturing on a4. And a game can... game could continue something like this very easily.
Yeah, completely. And here, this is where we've kind of coined that the vacuum cleaner has come on the board and the pieces are getting swapped off.
Yeah, this can be easily the outcome of the game, and black is capturing on a2. Still, I must say that in this position, I would rather be with the black side because of this nasty g4 pawn. It just blocks you. And of course, one thing you don't want to do with white, to play g3. This would be the last thing you want to do. I mean, this is, whoa, it's frightening. Can you imagine black has the bishop on f3? No. This is not something you want to deal with. So this g4 pawn it can be in your nightmares, I must say.
I must admit, you surprised me, Judit, with that noise. I'd never heard you make that sound. I completely agree. A move like g3, weakening your light squares for eternity, deserves it.
I mean, if you have your pawn on h5, we understand what we're doing, right? We just go f3 and we bring the king, and life is reasonable and it's okay. But having this pawn on g4, it's something that it should not be there if you play it from the white side. So this is after a takes b4, b takes a4, right? After the move a4, which was just played, and we still have this position while Ju is thinking and trying to figure out what's the best decision. But I would think at this point she thinks, okay, let's simplify the position. Let's play knight e3. Takes. Black would play bishop e6 or knight, or let's say just rook b3. I go knight d5, so I have an active knight. Black goes bishop e6. But it shouldn't be something I should be worried. And the white has a reasonable knight on f4, 3 against 3. Let's agree to a draw and go home.
But Judit, let me just bring up the rules, because the players are not allowed to offer a draw before move 40. So they have to find a way to repeat.
When did you have your first tournament where they told you that you're not allowed to make a draw on their move 40? Do you remember?
Yes.
Or more or less which period of time?
Yes, I do remember. And can you believe it, Judith? It feels like yesterday. It was 2005 in Corsica. I was playing in the rapid tournaments, and it was a big rapid open. And I do remember that I think the first round we played beginners, and then the second round, people of my rating were playing the top players rating. So I remember my friend was paired against Vishy Anand, and he got a great position. And he was 3 pawns up, but then 3 pawns became 2 pawns. And he still had a great position, but 2 pawns became 1 pawn up. And then he really wanted to offer a draw because he knew that Vishy would take it. But he couldn't offer a draw. And therefore he played it out and lost. And I had the same scenario as well. I really wanted to kind of chicken out, offer that draw in a much better position. But no, you have to play it to the end.
Yeah, it's actually this is the tricky part where there are several scenarios where it's changing the game, because before there were restrictions that you can that all this you could offer a draw anytime. There were many games where, let's say, a stronger player had a bad position and the solution was to offer a draw. And if the opponent agrees, great, fine. If they refuses, there are many examples that after that exchange of words, the player went wrong, right? So, And also, of course, it stops the very fast draws. Like after move 15, 20, players don't like their preparation, the middle game, and then just they offer a draw. So it's an interesting rule. But I remember myself when there were I think it was Linares when I played, and they said we have to sign it. I was so insulted, you know. I was so insulted by the fact that they wanted me to sign it, because I was considered a monster of not agreeing to a draw, not offering a draw. I mean, I was playing it out. I had my sharp style, so I was really offended, you know, and it was really upsetting. So it was not a nice feeling that they wanted to restrict our opportunities. But by now, I think most of the players are kind of used to that. So everybody adjusts their mindset accordingly, how they should. But it's kind of tricky.
It's a great idea. I mean, one of the things about chess before, especially in the past, was that, you know, you settle down to watch people play and you're getting really into the exciting moments. You're into the swing of things. As a spectator, you're fully engaged. And then suddenly the players go draw. And that's it. Game finished.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of sucks a little bit. So I kind of want to see the whole emotions. But okay, in situations like this where say they did get to this position where it's 3 versus 3, the minor pieces are, you know, bishop against knight, but ultimately they have to find a way to repeat the position 3 times. It can be a little bit. But then again, there's a lot of people playing chess, and a lot of people want to know, why is this a draw? Let the players show us the reasons. And going back to the position, what do you think, Judit? Do you think we're going to see like a mass trade, or do you think that Ju will try to hold on to the pawn on b3? I'm thinking of lifting up a rook.
I think
b3
that
makes more sense.
Lifting up rook e3 or rook d3? Well, rook e3 probably, right?
Just, yeah, I didn't quite know. Rook e3 gets in the way of the knight, but then rook to d3 puts the rook on a light square, vulnerable to attack.
Well, one thing I know that Ju, I believe, she's thinking right now not about how to get an advantage, how to play on. She's actually thinking about how to simplify the way that we are not playing long, and I'm not going to be pressed, because this is what white can end up, which we looked before with the line of rook d5. I think that's what we checked, or we didn't, because that's also possible. Just to go rook d5, a takes b3, a takes b3. Now black goes rook takes b3. Actually, I think probably this is the best, because white also stays kind of active.
Yeah. But here, Ju is a very ambitious player. So I think she will be looking at this as a last resort. That will be in the back of her pocket. But can I ask about another variation? Because if I were in Ju's shoes and I really wanted to press this one, I would be playing to win the g4 pawn. And I'm thinking rook to d4 first.
Yes.
Take the pawn. Then knight to e3. And then
let's
rook
play
c1.
against your plans. Rook c1?
Yeah. Let's just say rook c1. I'm trying here.
Interesting that you want to get rid of this g4.
It's been annoying since it arrived there.
I still have the feeling that it might be. I mean, okay, it might be not the best path. I go king g7, let's say.
And now knight takes d4. I get my wish, but probably it doesn't come to much.
I was thinking to go something like this.
Aha! I was going to.
Well, I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
You can go this, you can go g3, you can go king g. I mean, with knight on e3, this. Yes, sorry, you wanted to play something else?
No. This one is good. No, I was looking for tricks. That's all.
I mean, maybe h3 is just at least as good, because f5 is not possible because of rook c7 after all kind of moves. So it's also possible to play something like this. And then king g2. Yeah, so basically this is the big question right now, that what form white will decide to simplify. Whether your idea playing knight e3 and trying to capture the g4, or to capture the d5 and after that to stay solid. This is the big question right now. And these questions are not simple, especially in the match, and it's very frustrating that that the position is completely equalish, and okay, let's not waste our energy, and I know, everybody knows, but still you have to make moves. And this can be really annoying in such a situations when the opponent has the bishop. and it gives a better feeling for the game to play with the bishop, So here, definitely the straightforward thing is, okay, how do I simplify it the way that it's just a dead equal position and I'm not going to be suffering and struggling? And actually, after any kind of capture on simplification, I think the white knight will be standing best on e3. Even if you cannot capture the g4, but we capture the d5. Because after having the knight on e3, probably white will be able to play still g3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because of the pressure against the g4. So let's say we go back to this very basic line of ours. So what happens if white just goes knight e3? Actually, both players know that this game will end in a draw. But still, it's energy to play it until the end.
Right. And bearing in mind that this is one of Ju Wenjun's biggest strengths, that she has tremendous endurance, do you think she should play it out till the very end and force Tan to prove equality?
I don't think it's actually it's Ju who is trying to push in this game. I mean, the lines we were looking, it was clear that black is at least so comfortable as white. Maybe b takes a4 is something that we have to check. Maybe that's where the most possibilities are for white, or maybe that's the best circumstances. I mean, I like it that the knight comes into the center with knight e3 and knight d5, let's say.
Okay. So
I don't think Ju thinks that she's better. Because I don't think she's better.
She's an in-game grinder, Judith. I've seen her so many times in action where you think that maybe she's slightly worse, and she's just playing it out. She coordinates her pieces, and she's the one pushing. I mean,
yeah, but the problem is
an excellent player.
The problem is that simply in this endgame, the bishop is better than the knight. This is the problem. It's an open position. And as we talked about it quite a few times during this game, if black would not have the pawn on d5, it would be also just perfect for black to make a draw. So this is the thing. She took on a4. This is what I expected, that still it's the best form of the simplification. If we are here, let's take it. So now we are expecting rook b4. And rook b4 is not the only move. I mean, black can also play bishop e6 simply to protect the pawn first, and then to go rook a8 or rook b4. She goes rook b4. The most straightforward. I gave you the pawn, but it's only temporary, my friend.
Exactly. And and we did see scenarios where white has to be very careful. You did mention that the bishop is stronger than the knight, and there's also a passed d pawn as well. So if white was playing like knight e3, then d4 was coming, and suddenly black's pieces are coordinated very well, whereas there's no one, and I mean absolutely no one, to support those double a pawns. So yeah, I think time to, as you say, eliminate.
Well, it's a big question to me whether how Tan Zhongyi is thinking about it. Is she thinking that let's see in what form we can simplify it so I can press my opponent for 2 hours? You know, because it has a psychological effect in a match, especially. That let's say if we would come to this position, let's say I'm just putting this, okay? I mean, in this position, of course, it's equalish. It's no question about it. I mean, maybe now you can go rook d4 and with your idea try to put pressure on g4, which makes a lot of sense. But if back rank, this is what I can say. The back rank can be tricky.
It's a problem, right? And as we mentioned, you do not want to play as white moves like g3, just weakening those light squares. So,
but when we have the knight on e3 and the black bishop on e6, maybe already g3 is not so horrible. If I can make sure that black is not able to regroup the bishop, then it can be a reasonable move at some point, I think.
Maybe. Yeah. Just instinctively, I would not be playing g3. I think anything but that move.
So now, what to do with white?
Okay, so
what about playing a3, taking, and rook e3?
And now rook to... I do like going d4. Or rook to d8. Rook to d8 was a move, and also d4 was something.
Yeah, you can also go d4 and after rook d3, rook d8.
Yes, and I have intentions, quite bad ones, of going...
Quite nasty ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, suddenly this pawn is a strong pass pawn, black goes bishop a6, d3, and white is in trouble. So it's very tricky. If white wants to get the advantage, or I want to press, and then you find yourself in a surprising situation. So probably white is better if she's really thinking about the fact how to simplify. And actually, after having the rook on b4, it has a very powerful strength on the fourth rank and defending this amazing g4 pawn which you wanted to grab before.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so let's just go knight to e3. Let's try to liquidate. I do agree with you here. Ju Wenjun should be trying to hit the brake pedal and not push for anything. Okay, and no, she plays a5.
a5. Interesting. Well, now black has a serious question. Can she play d4 and try to keep the pawn, and suddenly from the isolated weak pawn possibly becomes an isolated strong pawn because it crossed the halfway, and restricting the knight to come to e3 also.
And I guess the idea would be, could she go rook e4? Although
there is a tactical option, yeah, to go here and still knight e3.
Right. But still you have f5, bishop f5, you have...
Yeah, knight c2 you have to go, because rook f4, g5. Pretty nasty situation, to be honest. Everything is hanging suddenly. But knight c2 is kind of a saving move still, but maybe a move before. Well, even this is still good for black. You can go here, takes, and rook a2, right?
Yeah.
And the a5 pawn will fall off. The only thing is that after f5, maybe white can go h3 or h4 at this point. And the bishop is kind of vulnerable. So it's pretty drawish. Even f3 is possible. So it's a question if d4 is possible.
And can you, first up, that's if Tan is feeling ambitious. If Tan just wants to simplify the position, and
instead of d4.
So instead of d4, so let's have a look at the alternatives. So first up, what happens after rook a4?
Rook a4. Well, of course, now again same questions. Rook d5 or knight e3. For some reason, I rather play knight e3 and have my knight in the center. I don't know if d4 is possible, knight c2 and rook d8. Though after knight, I can go knight d5, trying to exchange the bishop.
Okay, there's no tactical ideas, so you can go bishop e6.
I can go here and knight c6. Yeah, it's we are reaching out in very different, not very different, but little different forms to exchange those 3 pawns on the queen's side, right? d4 and the double a pawn for white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I fully understand why Ju does not want to simplify it, because it just feels like I'm the one who they press. It's not me who is pressing, and it's depressing.
and after knight to e3, I'm just looking at because we have scenarios where black wants to press, and what happens if black doesn't want to press? Is there an easy path to the draw? So I'm thinking like bishop e6.
Or if black doesn't want, then I think she can just play, just takes, rook a2 and rook a8 next, right?
Yeah. And there's also a possibility of going rook takes a5, not capturing the knight, sorry.
Hold on, I go back. Here? To capture just on a5. But I think maybe here I can go with knight b4 or something, no? But probably, yeah.
Maybe
I think I would go...
Unless there's some...
Oh, I don't want to do that with black.
I know. I heard that was like one of the rules that grandmasters don't... They always follow. I mean, that they don't pin themselves.
No, the thing is that with white, I would be just happy, you know? That, okay, in this position, it's definitely not black who is playing. I mean, from white point of view, I for sure would be happy if they want to exchange the knight for the bishop.
That is very, very true. This one is slightly better for white.
Bishop and knight, it's black who is pressing. It's just uncomfortable for white. I don't know. It should be a draw. It's a draw, but you know.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You understand what I'm saying? It's just like
completely.
You have your tight jacket on, and you can stretch yourself.
Yeah.
So it's and you know those top guys, for example, Magnus, the amount of wins he made out of an equalish position, he does it exactly the way that it's a draw, it's a drawish, it should be a draw, obviously, but still, when you feel uncomfortable, you start to make inaccuracies, the time is ticking, you go down on time, and you can make any move is a draw, then you make an inaccuracy, then only 3 moves is a draw, then you make again an inaccuracy, and then, it would be, with this move, it would be still a draw. But you have to be very accurate, and maybe you have to make your only move already. This is how Vichy, for example, lost his game in, what was it, game 5? Or what was it in their match in Chennai? In 2014, I think, when he lost against Magnus, the first match he won. Magnus. I mean, drawish endgame, but it's frustrating to defend something which is completely drawish. Just because objectively it is, it doesn't mean that you can hold it. And I think this is the reason also, for example, Vichy, in such a position, if he understands it, that I know it's going to be uncomfortable because we are going to simplify those 3 pawns, he just goes for it. He knows, he understands, it's not unpleasant, it's not a shame, it's not a whatever. I look how I go straight for the draw, for the simplification, that I do a draw. Because he had quite a few games himself also. Kasparov also lost these kind of games. Most of the top guys, who even are very good endgame players, it's a lot different if you look how players are playing endgames when they have the upper hand and they are pressing, or they are being pressed. It's a whole different story, and you can find even the highest level that they may not play the best endgame if they have on the worse side.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And as Magnus and a lot of the grinders out there, they say, it's just simply, when you begin an endgame, it's a draw, 50 ways to draw. But then, as you mentioned there, at the end of it, the path is extremely narrow. And rook to a4 played by Tan Zhongyi. And I also really like what you have to say, where don't make things comfortable for your opponent. Here, Tan Zhongyi, she has the bishop. It's a better piece currently than the knight. And this fact is making Ju Wenjun uncomfortable. So don't be so eager to trade off your assets. And now rook takes d5 is what we are fully expecting. I can see that was you, Judit, right?
It was me.
What was it?
It was
sure
my
enough,
hand,
yeah, okay.
Now it's Juice. Yeah, she made it. Yes, because I think she wants this way. I think was it rook a2 the move? No, bishop e6.
Yeah.
Smart move. I think what Ju Wenjun has in mind, that she wants to exchange one of the rooks. That's why she played b takes a4 and a5, because now she will be playing maybe rook e5. But it's tricky, because after rook a5, if let's say black would be going rook a8, I'm just saying, even sometimes I don't know if rook e6 would be possible. Probably it's not so good. So let's see where she moved her rook to c5. Rook takes a2. So the simplification is on the process.
Okay, any way to mobilize?
But now there are several things black can be thinking of. Because black obviously has in mind that she can go rook a8 and attack the a5, right? But the other idea is to go rook b8 and double the rook on the second, because this a5 pawn will not run away. It has to be defended from the rook on c5. And the question is how white will be handling this weakness on f2, where the knight is going to be placed.
Yeah, well, where is the knight going? I've been trying to answer that question whilst you were talking. So rook a8 is coming, rook to b8. There's going to be pressure against f2. And the knight doesn't have any squares. It can go to e3. And I was also drawn to ideas of rook takes bishop, but that's not happening in any moment. So, okay. What about rook to g5? Could be a response.
You're brave.
Yeah. I'll do anything in the quest to win a pawn.
But black can just simply go rook b4. What do you think about that?
I think it's very good.
I mean, it shouldn't be a problem for white. I mean, you go rook c5 back, black goes, I don't know, can I go rook b2? Rook b2, I mean, with the knight on e3, it's also not the end of the world because it's fixing it very well. I mean, covers the c4 so the bishop cannot go there. It keeps the bishop busy to defend the pawn on g4. For the moment, okay, white still has a passed pawn. Well, black can play, of course. Just strengthen the position.
You can see a situation where things turn in black's way. Like, for instance, let's just fantasize a little bit and say white does nothing. Then black's going to go f5, f4, g3 is even going to be in the air. I'm scared.
Well, we shouldn't be so scared, I guess. I mean, what are you going to do with black with my a5 pawn?
I'm watching.
Eventually, sorry, you're watching it. You keep an eye on it. First of all, exactly. I can try to chase you to start with. I mean, one thing I cannot do to sit and wait and do nothing. Obviously, at some point, I have to act and chase your rooks or do something.
Okay, so if black is content with a draw, then you can just trade off rooks and the pawn on a5 will fall. But I want to maximize this position, so I want to move a rook to... Yeah, rook to d2, no? You're going to go knight c3.
Yeah, but probably anyway I go knight c3.
Yeah, and then I have to go rook... Where am I putting the rook? Because if I go rook c2, then I haven't done the job of babysitting the a5 pawn.
Well, for example, this can be a danger.
Are you not going to take the rook on a2?
No. Sorry?
I thought it was white. White is looking to draw and black was looking to press.
Yes. I don't want to take, I don't want to exchange the rooks. If we exchange one pair of rooks, then I don't see any practical chance for black, even if I just sit and wait.
No, I was just looking at...
I have to keep the two rooks, I think.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But white can go knight takes a2, right?
Sorry. I just got completely confused. I'm sorry.
Yeah, here they can go here.
Yeah. Even you can try to go a6. Yeah. My rook knight is hanging. Oh. Yeah, but this will be... I don't think it's so much. I don't know what kind of plan even black can do. I mean, I just come back with the knight somewhere. Because I have no weaknesses that you can target to. With two rooks, I'm in huge danger if you have one more rook here, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And here I don't see really. I mean, even if you push your pawns, I mean, and I'm doing nothing. Even here, I'm not sure that.
And does white ever want to go h3, you know, maybe not in this particular position, but I'm just thinking h3 just to get rid of this pawn on g4 that's a nuisance, just to simplify.
Yeah, but I think it's extremely difficult to lose it for white at this level. I mean, you have to make really lot of inaccuracies will be not enough. You have to make a lot of mistakes, real mistakes, to lose this. While if there are 4 rooks on the board, it's not the same.
No, with 4 rooks on the board, you know, and you can imagine the white rooks being so passive, then absolutely this is going to be extremely dangerous. But
so we have this position for the moment. It's on the board, and Ju Wenjun's move. And the question is, what is she up to? Is she going to play knight e3? Is she going to be playing with any of the rooks?
And
knight g3, knight e4 maybe. So now she has to make a decision, a strategy. Where do I want to see my knight?
You know, Judit, I was thinking of suggesting a really terrible move, but I was inspired by your rook takes bishop. So I was thinking of going rook to g5. Now, this is not
I was just looking at that. I was thinking about that. But the thing is that I think I would just go rook b8. And we cannot take, for example, because on the first rank we're dying.
Mm-hmm.
This is the big problem.
Yeah.
We're dying this way. And if you cannot go rook e6, then what's the point, right?
What is the point of putting the rook? I mean, also the rook on g5 is so badly placed because you can get trapped at any stage.
Okay, you can go knight e3, what you wanted.
Okay, well, we actually have a move. We don't have to look at weird and wonderful moves like rook to g5. Knight to e3 played. Very, very natural. Very quick. What did you play? Rook b8.
Rook b8. No, rook a8. Ah, okay. If she plays, I would go rook b8.
Well, rook b8 was really actually uncomfortable for white in the sense that they had to find a few accurate moves because rook to b2 was on the agenda, but rook a8. Okay, Tan is saying she's satisfied with equal, maybe slightly better position for her.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's game 1. We should not forget about that. If it would be game 3 or 5 already, I think we could see easily she's playing rook b8 and trying to press.
Mm-hmm.
But she understands that this game should be a draw. I mean, her opponent is a strong player. She's not going to make such a mistake. And she says, okay, just simplify. Knight d5.
Knight d5. Okay, so she's literally saying, take my knight and take the pawn on a5, and let's soon find a way to shake hands. Yeah, it's very important, you know, if you want to set up this threefold repetition, to make eye contact with your opponent. Very, very important.
Yeah. It's only move 29, but we are not far away from 40.
Mm-hmm.
So what does she have in mind if, well, there is no simplification of... But maybe the question is, in this position, what's her aim? Is she going to come back? Or maybe, you know, f4, it can be an interesting square for the knight.
Okay, let's experiment. We've seen the knight on e3 a few times, but let's go the other direction. Okay, move the bishop to f5.
Yeah. And maybe she wants to go h3, you know?
But now we have...
I mean, f3 was also quite okay, but even h3 takes, even taking with the knight, big deal.
Yeah, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And say you went g5 after h3.
Then h takes g4.
As easy as that.
Yeah, there will be no pressing in this game. No pressing.
Yeah, and there we can see it on the players. Tan Zhongyi looking very comfortable as she contemplates whether to capture the pawn on a5, maybe capture a knight, but we are predicting that there will be a trade of rooks. And just, I would say, a very well played game. It started off with Ju testing Tan Zhongyi in the Sicilian. Tan seemed very well prepared and reacted well to some opening surprises that Ju set.
Yeah, it is quite a good game. There were no fireworks and great actions in the game, but little nuances had to be played.
Yeah, and both players with a very sophisticated round one game so far, but we're going to go on a very short break, and when we return, we'll be following through on what happens.
Looking back at your career, do you think all the hard work to become one of the best chess players in the world was worth it? Would you do it again, or would you choose a different path? Well, I don't think I can say I would do a different path. I was so successful and I love the game so much that when you love the game, when you're successful, when you have all those achievements, I think it's very hard not to like it. Of course, I would do it again. I had so many good things in my life through chess that I don't think I would like to change that. Do you think we'll see a female player become a world champion in the open category in the near future? And are there any current players you believe have the potential to achieve this? I do believe that someday there is obviously a possibility that a female will become the absolute world champion. But right now, I would more like to see maybe several ladies in the top 20, let's say. I think that would be a bigger achievement to show that ladies are capable. And obviously, it is possible from my perspective. Right now, I can't pinpoint out anybody that much who is already very close. But of course, there are players like Botana. I met her, she's a huge talent, she loves the game. But she's not the only one, there are other, obviously, many Indian girls, I think, maybe we don't even know them. But I even met several ones who, if everything turns out well, and they are dedicated, the parents are supportive, they have good coaches, they have all the potential to become the best player they can. And I strongly believe that it's not a matter of gender. So obviously, I'm very supportive on that, and I hope that in a decade or two, we are going to see several girls being in the top 20, let's say.
Join the community club on chess.com and participate in amazing community events every week. On Mondays, challenge yourself with incredible openings in Opening Roulette. Don't miss on Title Tuesday every week right after Title Tuesday. On Wednesday, join Arena Kings and compete against a lineup of legendary creators. On Fridays, try the all-new Community Freestyle Fridays and throw opening theory out the window. And finally, round of the week by showing off your speed in the Community Bullet Brawl. Win prizes, battle legends, and challenge yourself. Play in the community tournaments every week on chess.com.
And we are back with Game 1 of the FIDE Women's World Championship, where we've seen Ju Wenjun take on Tan Zhongyi. And here it is, Judit. I have to compliment you on your predicting skills because you called it. The players have followed the path to equality, very simple equality, just like you said it would. And here, just to do a kind of rewind of the players are making very quick moves.
Yeah, we actually reached to this point in our analysis because what has happened just very quickly that after knight d5, black captured on a5, continuation, her logical way of playing, simplifying, and white, Ju Wenjun played a very straightforward move, knight f4, and it's not only placed very well there, but it supports very well the h3, and this enemy pawn on g4 is liquidated. So black took on h3, knight h3, which I still believe is a very ugly move, but what you have to do in order to make a draw and simplify. And I think black took on h3, takes king g7, and the players are going to be playing the next few moves, not because they have no respect towards each other, but because there is a rule that they cannot agree to a draw before move 40.
Yeah. And even though Tan Zhongyi has a lot of time on the clock, a significant time lead, she'll be making those moves very quickly as the players strive to either make that repetition or get to move 40, upon which after they can offer a draw. And we see a rook check, king will step, and now rook f5 is what I'm predicting. And now here it comes. We are going to see repetition.
Absolutely.
And the players have made eye contact, handshake, and game 1 finishes in a draw. Wow, what a cagey, tense game that was in the end, full of subtleties and nuances. Ju Wenjun tested her opponent in the Sicilian. Tan Zhongyi, well, she had all the answers. Judith, what do you think of this start?
Well, I think it was kind of a very normal game 1 of World Championship match here. It was a pretty sound game. It was something that Ju Wenjun was testing her challenger in the opening. Tan made a very good reaction to that. There were some moments where a decision had to be made to go on a more solid or more complicated way. It was pretty obvious that Ju will be going on the solid. It's not only about her style. But in game 1, you don't want to take any risk, any complications, any interesting ideas which you're not familiar. It's not the moment yet. The moment is just to feel the other one, test the other one, understand what form I am and what form my opponent is, warming up your brain. There will be moments when you will have no choice but make a serious decision that I have to sharpen things out. If you lose a game after that, or if it's tight and you have to win a game. So there was no reason at all that anything else should be gone differently. So I think both players must be kind of quite happy with the game 1.
Well, the players will certainly be relieved that game one is in the books, that they've somehow they managed to settle their nerves, and there's a lot of nerves in a World Championship match. But I know it's very, very early days just yet, but can I ask you, what kind of shape do you feel that these players are in?
Well, of course, from one game, it's extremely difficult to judge it, but I think Tan was in very good shape. She made good choices. The only moment I thought that when she grabbed back e takes d5, when the simplification came just after the queen exchange. Maybe I'm not right. Maybe rook d8, what I thought it was not a better move. But I think she reacted very well. She played very energetically the position, and she had to. She found this queen g5, which was the best move, I believe. So from the first game, I would think that Tan is going to be a very tough opponent for Ju. But of course, there is so much to come in the next few rounds that we'll see who is making the first serious mistake, who is taking the lead, and how much the psychology will be part of their match.
Absolutely. There is more than just the chess to this match, as Judit mentions. And so after game one, well, we can take a look at the scoreboard. It is even Stevens, but it is just the beginning. One game in the books, and there's 11 more to go. So, wow. As the players, they're going to get ready for press conference. We are obviously going to come back tomorrow, same time. For those of you on America, I'm sorry, you're going to have your breakfast or stay up very, very late with us. And for those in European, then it's 9 a.m. start. But we have a lot more action, a lot more decisive games, and this is just the beginning. Judit, it's been a pleasure as always, and I'd like to thank everyone at home for tuning in and following the action, and see you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
好，我们马上就要开始今天的棋手交流会了。We may start very soon. First, let's welcome Charlize as the press officer of FIDE to start. 我们首先请 Charlize 来跟我们分享。
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first official press conference of the first game of the FIDE Women's World Championship match. The game concluded in a draw, and my first question for both players is how you feel about this result, especially Ju playing with the white pieces.
欢迎大家今天来参加第一场的棋手交流会。那今天是国际棋联女子世界冠军赛对抗赛的第一场，刚刚结束。对局结果呢是和棋。那我们新闻官第一个问题呢是给两位棋手的。今天的是一场和棋，然后大家有什么感受？尤其是居文君执白棋，那请居文君先回答吧。
我觉得今天这盘棋，可能大家都比较平淡吧。我虽然说开局可能是一个比较不对称的结构，但是总的来说很快就进行了一些交换。那么一盘和棋，那么比赛也刚刚开始，我觉得也是一个比较正常的一个结果。
The game went calm and peaceful for a while. The position was unsymmetrical, but there was not too much chance. And Ju was satisfied for the first game to be concluded in a draw. It's a very reasonable result.
作为后手的话，我肯定是非常满意这个结果的。但是比赛才刚开始，我觉得双方可能都还在找自己的节奏。整体这盘棋我感觉，确实比较波澜不惊。可能，随着可能比赛的发展，大家可能会有一些调整。
For Tan Zhongyi, the first game with black ended in a draw is quite good for her. It's the very beginning of the match. For her to find a tempo is really important. So she believes that in the future they will get better soon. And the first game is quite well for her.
And from the chess side of things, we saw a Sicilian in the French variation, and both players seemed to blitz out the opening moves very quickly. Ju opted for a sideline with bishop d3, and Tan started thinking of the bishop g5 from white. Were you both surprised by your opponent's preparations? And Tan, did you feel a little uncomfortable or unaware of this bishop g5 line? Both players.
好，那我们新闻官第二个问题呢是说，今天的这个对局一开始是西西里防御，然后转成了这个比较有意思的这个法兰西便利。那白方呢选择了比较早的走向第三，之后呢，白方走了象g5之后，黑方进行了比较长时间的思考。那在这个过程中，他也想问问两个棋手是怎么样想的。那我们这边先问一下谭中怡来。
他象g5这步棋，就我当时在评估他是怎么样的一个心态，就是这个花了一些时间。但是我还是觉得，可能不要想太多，就走棋就好了。
For the move after bishop g5, Tan Zhongyi evaluated the psychological reason behind that move, and she decided that it's better not to think too much, just go with the flute.
那这盘棋我觉得我的对手应对的也是，应对的比较好的，所以我也没有找到特别的机会。
Ju Wenjun finds that her opponent has a very strong defense. She tried very hard, but not too much had been yield.
My final question to the players before we open up the floor. The first game is over now. Are your nerves a little bit more settled? And how do you feel for the rest of the match?
我们新闻官最后一个问题是给双方棋手的。那第一场比赛结束之后，大家有没有感觉到说状态进入了一点，会更好一点？那之后有没有什么特别的准备？
我觉得比赛刚开始嘛，也会慢慢的进入状态。那么对于比赛，我觉得就是享受这个过程就好了。
It's just the beginning of the match. Ju Wenjun believes that she will gradually put her effort to get the best form.
我觉得双方就是现在因为刚开始嘛，都比较谨慎，然后所以说没有太过多的去，就是说走一些非常激进的这种，虽然是可能看起来是西西里的开局，但是我的对手作为先手，他还是选择了更局面这样的一个下法，所以说我觉得总的来说目前还没有感到太大的压力。
For the first game, even though it was in Sicilian, but actually the variation was quite calm. Tan Zhongyi is quite satisfied about that.
Thank you very much. Now we will take some questions from journalists from the floor.
感谢两位棋手的精彩回答。那我们现在就请大家记者朋友们可以提问了。您可以举手，我们会给到麦克，或者您大声点就行。
这个问题是对居文君的一个提问，就是我们理 chess 团队有一个 FM， 想问您在14步的时候花了18分钟想象E7那步棋，然后还有一个可能是走向G3， 然后可能会保持一些对局面的这个压力。您当时是怎么选择的？想的呢？
就是这个棋，我觉得象一期是一个更多的是一种，感觉是一部比较合理或者说更在考虑范围之内的棋吧。可能象G3会更加的复杂一点，但是也许也是一个不错的选择，所以我没有太多的进行一些计算。
Could you please repeat the question in English, Lian?
Yeah, a question from the Lichess team. For Ju Wenjun, you spent quite some time for move 14. So after 18 minutes, you decided to play bishop takes on e7. The interesting alternative was bishop takes on g3, keeping some tension. And yeah, what was the particular thoughts process in that move?
Ju Wenjun believes that bishop takes e7 was more logical at the time, and she tried to think about bishop g3, but she didn't want to take too much risk at the time.
Do we have any further questions?
Yeah, also a question for Ju Wenjun on move 23. She thought for roughly around 20 minutes or so. I was just wondering if she could share a little bit about some of the stuff she might have been thinking about. I think it was 23. Yeah.
23回合的时候，这位记者问Ju Wenjun有进行长考，那当时的这个思维过程是什么样的？
我觉得可能局面将会走向和棋，但是仍然可以有一些选择，所以我就思考了一下，然后走了，然后可能花了一些时间吧，但是我觉得对结果没有太大的变化。
Ju Wenjun thought that at that moment the game could be most likely ended in a draw. She tried her best to squeeze something, but in fact, at the end, she thought it is probably the best to keep it that way.
If there will be no further questions, I think that concludes our very first game press conference. Game 2 will be tomorrow, 3 p.m. local time, and Tan Zhongyi will play with the white pieces. We'll see you then.
如果没有更多的问题的话，我们这个第一场新闻交流会就结束了。那明天呢，还是3点钟，我们的谭忠仪会执白先行。那也欢迎各位记者朋友们一起来报道这个赛事，一起来享受国际象棋。感谢大家。
There we heard it from the players. A calm, peaceful start. Neither player actually giving too much away, would you say, Judit?
Well, not at all, but it's game 1, it's a warm-up phase, as we said. Players were not so eager, I think, to come to the press conference. They understood there is not much to say, only for chess professionals or who really care about the moves, the little nuances and details, but big things did not really happen, and we could see that they are getting ready into the big fight in the middle of the match.
No fireworks just yet, but the match is only just beginning. And well, game 1 is in the books, and we have now another 11 games to go. So join us tomorrow for more of the same, more of the action, more of the coverage. And for those of you unlucky enough to be on the East Coast, well, unfortunately, it's very early morning, late night, 3 a.m. start for you. And in Europe, it is 9 a.m. Judit, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and your stories with us. And thank you everyone at home for watching, and see you all tomorrow.